What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Oak Tree Football channel, and in today's video, I'm going to be giving you guys my thoughts on the Eagles' win against the Dallas Cowboys on Sunday Night Football in Week 8 of the 2020 NFL season. Now, I'm going to get right into it. Eagles didn't play incredible. They did win by 14. I was very impressed by the defense, especially in the second half, but the offense was pretty lackluster, turned the ball over 4 times. And I think at times they moved the ball well. I definitely think there were some good players, but there were some things that I think really need to change if the Eagles can really be a playoff contender. Because I think this team is the best team in the NFC East right now. Sure, they aren't looking incredible, but if you look at what the Cowboys, the Giants, and the Washington football team have done in the last few weeks, I just don't think you can say that any of those teams are better than the Eagles. The only team I think that really has a chance to do better than the Eagles, which is possible because the Eagles could maybe not win a game for the rest of the season, for me is probably the Washington football team, maybe the Cowboys if Andy Dalton starts to get something going, but they haven't looked good. This division just is not good at all, which, you know, is good for the Eagles, but, I mean, if they play like they did against Dallas, this team is going to win the division with 6 wins. Those other 3 wins that they would get this season would be against divisional opponents. So I'm hoping that's not the case. But the Eagles have a really tough schedule the rest of the way. Have to play a lot of good teams. So, you know, their chances of ending the season with a winning record aren't great. But I'm going to get into this, starting with some things I thought were very good from the game. Certain players, some things I thought were good. First of all, I have Travis Fulgham. Fulgham, since he made his first start back in Week 4 against the 49ers. He has just been a really good receiver. He has been the #1 receiver for the Eagles this season. And he's actually been one of the better receivers in the league since Week 4. He's made a lot of catches. I think he's had a touchdown in every game. He might have not had a touchdown in one game, but he's got a lot of touchdowns. He's had a lot of yards, had 78 receiving yards and 1 touchdown against the Cowboys. He was one of the few players that stayed consistent all night long, continued to just play well, and he's done that the entire season. That's what you really want from a guy like Fulgham. He's really stepped up when the Eagles needed him, and now with some players coming back being healthy, some receivers, some tight ends, some running backs potentially, he still has played well. And that's good because now there's going to be some more targets, hopefully, that can catch the ball and get some more yards other than just giving it to Fulgham all the time. He led the team with 78 receiving yards. Second leading the team was Jalen Reagor, who I do have as my second player for good game. Reagor had his best game as a pro, in my opinion. Only did have 16 receiving yards, which isn't incredible. It was second on the team, which isn't great. But he did have a 2-yard touchdown, and he did have a 2-point conversion catch. I believe he was targeted 4 times, made 3 receptions for a touchdown and 16 yards. He did drop a pass later in the game. Well, he didn't drop it. It was knocked out of his hands. But he maybe could have caught that for another touchdown before the game ended. But it didn't really matter. He had a solid game. He played pretty well overall, and I'm hoping he can play well because I've been higher on Jalen Reagor than almost anyone, and I was actually very happy when the Eagles took him. Maybe he wasn't my first choice at the time, but I was still happy with the pick. I've liked Jalen Reagor since college. I think he's a really good player. He's fast. He has good hands. And he had been injured before this, hadn't done much in his few games early, but he looked good. He looked solid against the Cowboys. Next up, I have TJ Edwards on the defense. Edwards had one of his best games, if not his best game of the year. He had 13 tackles, 2 of them for loss, and 1 sack. Eagles had a few players that got sacks last night. Edwards was one of them. Edwards definitely had a good game, which is kind of a rarity for him. He's not a bad player, but it's not every day you're going to see him putting up the numbers he did against the Cowboys. He was definitely one of the better players for the Eagles. Maybe he even was the best player for the Eagles. 13 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 1 sack. Very good game for him. Next up, 2 defensive linemen, Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox. I think the defensive line played good in general, but specifically Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox. 2 sacks between them. Brandon Graham had a forced fumble in the red zone. 7 tackles between them. Fletcher Cox had 2 tackles for loss. Both of those guys just had really good nights overall. Those guys are two of the better defensive linemen in the NFL, in my opinion. Fletcher Cox hasn't been incredible this season, but Brandon Graham has. I believe he's second place in the league in sacks right now. Aaron Donald and Myles Garrett, I believe, are tied for first with 9, and he is in second or third, if you want to put it like that, with 7 sacks. He's never had double-digit sacks in his career, but it's looking like that could change this year. He's looking really good right now. One of the better defensive linemen in the league so far, has been one of the best players for the Eagles this season. And Fletcher Cox, he has been solid at times, but it hasn't been his best season, but it's still been solid by Fletcher Cox, I think, and he got an important sack in the game against the Cowboys. And then my final thing that I thought was good, I just put the defense overall. 4 sacks, no touchdowns allowed. They did allow 3 field goals in the first quarter, or the first half, but they were all pretty long field goals. It was a 49-yard field goal off a turnover, a 49-yard field goal on the first drive of the game, and then a 59-yard field goal right before halftime. And after those 3 field goals, Eagles didn't allow any points at all. They probably should have had an interception at one point. They had a few plays where they got hands on the ball. They just weren't able to haul it in. I don't think Ben DiNucci had a great game. Eagles definitely could have had some more turnovers on him. I was pretty surprised that it was only 2 because Ben DiNucci really wasn't playing very well. He didn't look like he was on the same page with some of his receivers. Michael Gallup had a few drops. Amari Cooper didn't have the best game. But the defense played pretty well, in my opinion. I think they did a good job keeping control of the Cowboys, which the Cowboys haven't been great offensively the past few weeks, but still, it's important to not allow too many yards and touchdowns. Things that I think were okay. Number 1, I had Boston Scott. I was considering putting Boston Scott in things I think were good. He did have 70 rush yards, no touchdowns for him. Boston Scott, I think he had probably his best game that wasn't against the Giants of his career. He was very good against the Giants last week. He was very good against the Giants at the end of last season. Had a good game this week, 70 rushing yards. I believe he had 10 receiving yards, something like that. So just about 80 yards from scrimmage. He had a good game overall, especially early. Later on in the game, he had a few backwards runs and some runs that didn't really get anywhere, but still, overall, I think it was a pretty solid game from Boston Scott. Next up, I have Rodney McLeod. Now, Rodney McLeod did have one of the Eagles' touchdowns, of course. A sack on DiNucci. He lost the ball. Vinny Curry recovered, and then he lost the ball. And then Rodney McLeod recovered and took it all the way for a touchdown. Now, arguably, Vinny Curry was down. And I think that play should have been reviewed again. And they did review it because it was a touchdown. I was very surprised that play stood. It is debatable. I think you can make the argument. But even to me, it seemed pretty obvious that Vinny Curry had the ball with pretty much full possession, and he was definitely down by contact. So I do think it should have probably been down. Eagles should have gotten the ball. But still, I mean, it counted. It's a touchdown for Rodney McLeod. He's a solid player. He had a solid game. Really didn't do much other than that sack that touchdown. And another player who really didn't do much other than one big play, Vinny Curry. He did originally recover that fumble before losing it again. But the really big play I talked about was an early sack in the first quarter. It was for a pretty big loss, so I think it was a 12-yard loss on the sack, something like that. It was a good play by Curry, but he didn't have the best night overall. I think he only had 1 tackle, which was that sack. So not the best night for Vinny Curry, but still, he did get a sack, which helped the Eagles get to 4 sacks on the night. And some things I think were bad. First of all, everyone knows what's coming right here. Carson Wentz slashed the turnovers. Wentz had 4 turnovers. He did have 2 touchdowns, but only 123 pass yards, which is not ideal from a quarterback. Now, I'm still a big believer in Wentz. I still think he can do good things in the league, but he just hasn't shown it this season. 4 turnovers, leads the league with 12 interceptions. Kirk Cousins is second with 10. And I think he can be a solid quarterback. I mean, he had a few good throws, but those turnovers really cost this game because 3 of the turnovers, I believe, were in Dallas territory. First of all, on 4th down, the first turnover was on Eagles' first drive. Should have just thrown it away. took the sack instead and ended up losing the ball. Brandon Graham made a good play to force a fumble to keep it out of the end zone or keep points off the board by the Cowboys, but still, you need to do better there. The second one was 4th down and 4 in Cowboys territory. Wentz had pressure and was sacked and lost the ball. Next one, he just took a shot to the end zone. It was. I don't think it was really his fault because he was kind of throwing it away, but he still kept it in bounds, which he could have done better with that throw. And it was just an incredible play. I don't think that one is too bad. But the other one, he kind of just threw it up to, I believe, Greg Ward. And it was kind of overthrown. I do think the wind played a factor because it was very windy, but still, that could have been prevented. But if those 3 turnovers, if the Eagles get them back, that's maybe, however many points on the board it is. Next up, I have play calling. Play calling was not great. Same as last week. Play calling hasn't been very good this year. I'm hoping that can change. And then the offensive line, they allowed 4 sacks. A lot of pressure on Wentz overall. Cowboys were bringing a lot of pressure for a lot of the time, which is something the Eagles actually weren't. But there are a few plays where the Cowboys defensive line was able to get, and the linebackers were able to get to Wentz, which I think did cause a lot of the fumbles and interceptions. But I hope Wentz can bounce back because it just wasn't a great game. But those were my thoughts on the Eagles winning against the Cowboys. It didn't really feel like a win, if I'm going to be honest, but a win is a win. What were your guys' thoughts? Tell me in the comment section below. If you guys did enjoy this video, don't forget to leave a like. And if you're new around here, don't forget to subscribe for more NFL and college football content. I haven't been posting as much content recently, so I'm going to try and post some more content in the coming days. I have a pretty big video that I'm working on right now, which I'll try to get out soon. So, yeah, more content on the way, but thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Go Eagles!